Hello, and welcome to this intuitive eating overview video. I'm Gillian Goerzen, and I'm so glad that you're here and that you're curious to learn a little bit more about intuitive eating and discover maybe if it's a good fit for you or not. So, my intention in this next video is to give you kind of a broad brush overview of intuitive eating, help you really understand a little bit more about what it is, where it came from, and all kind of, a few of the nuances that kind of define intuitive eating so you can kind of see if maybe that's something that you want to try on further. So, a little bit more about me before we get started. Um, what you might be surprised to know is that I am a recovering dieter. I put myself on my very first diet when I was 8 years old, and my dieting experience, really was quite diverse. I've done it all, and I'm on the other side of dieting, and I'm living in an anti-diet approach or a non-diet approach or an intuitive eating approach now, and I've become so passionate about it, and because it's been so transformative for me and so transformative for my clients that I actually became a certified intuitive eating counselor. And so, what does that mean? It means that I took a coursework and also did a mentorship with one of the founders of intuitive eating and have completed all of their requirements. And so, I am so excited to share this information with you. I feel like it has been, like I said, so transformative for me, so transformative for my clients, so transformative for my people in my individual coaching practice. And I am just so excited kind of to shout it from the rooftops and help everybody know there's another way. You don't have to diet for the rest of your life. So I wanted to start by like telling you, yeah, I'm in it and I get it. And I get that it's frustrating to be in diet land. I understand the vortex, the pull to want to change your body. And I want to share with you that there is this way that is much more peaceful, much more kind, much more compassionate, and really so much more freeing. So, sounds great, Jillian. Very gauzy, wonderful, la la la. But what is intuitive eating? So let's dive in here. So, what is intuitive eating? Very simply put, it's a weight neutral framework that it really helps you develop a non-diet approach to nutrition, movement, and health. It really takes the focus off of kind of transforming your body and back to feeling the best in your body. So it takes the focus off the exterior, puts it back on how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel in your body? What do you want to be able to do with your body? How do you want to relate with your body? All of those things. It's a methodology that was developed by two registered dietitians, Evelyn Tribole, who I took my training through, and Elise Resch. This book, which is kind of the foundation for all of this, is in its fourth edition, and it's a really fantastic book. It gives you all of the background, all of the research behind, a lot more of the kind of the history, etc., and kind of how we got here. And I highly recommend the book, highly, highly recommend the book. But I know that not everybody reads books, which is why I created this video and why I've created my course, because I know that we all learn in different ways. And so, as someone who has spent a long time dieting, this book was very mind blowing for me. And again, which it's what led me to getting my own certification as an intuitive eating counselor. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the foundation of intuitive eating. Um, so, ultimately, what intuitive eating believes is that we all have the ability to cultivate an awareness of our biological and psychological needs through physical sensations and cues that are sent through our bodies and our minds, that we have this capacity inborn. And essentially, we're wired to be able to listen to this and wired to be able to listen to those innate body cues and respond appropriately. In fact, we're really born this way. They've done studies actually. They look at toddlers and they offer toddlers a variety of foods over time, toddlers might look like they're just kind of eating one food group in a meal or a snack, but over the course of a week or longer, they will actually eat a really balanced nutritional intake without any rules, without any guidelines or any metrics, without any intervention from their parents. They just will do that because they're listening to their body's cues. So what happened to us? What happened to adults? Where did we lose this kind of intuitive voice that we were born with? And the answer is really through years of dieting and or cultural programming, from parents, well-meaning parents that told us that we needed to clean our plate to earn dessert, well-meaning people from media telling us that we needed to transform our bodies to fit this thin ideal or a very specific type of a body. Where we've been led to believe that we really must ignore our innate signals and follow all these rules in order to conform to this ideal. Follow these rules, do these checky boxes, eat this many calories, eat this many macros, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to do all those things and ignore what signals we might be getting from our body that we're hungry or we're not hungry in order to kind of fit in the box. This emphasis is really on a very singular and often very purely aesthetic physical outcome. And that's one of the challenges of diet culture is that as a society, we are very focused on a very narrow aesthetic. And it can be really damaging because, about 95% of the population don't actually meet that aesthetic and aren't genetically designed to meet that aesthetic. And so we kind of are fighting against our genetics and fighting against kind of our innate body's natural state. And then we can't then be the intuitive eater we were designed to be. So the intuitive eating approach is really grounded in this philosophy of health at every size. And maybe you've heard of that. It's called HAES for short, or HAES, health at every size. And the predominant belief within this paradigm is that your health is distinct from your size. And that health is very multidimensional and not this singular body focused, body aesthetic focused thing that it has kind of come to mean within kind of popular culture. Health and wellness industry is very kind of obsessive on weight as kind of this primary and solitary metric of health. And that's really unhelpful because it's really, really not true. There's so much more to your health than what your body's relationship with gravity is. And even if you're not focused on weight as a metric, that kind of size metric, measurements, etc., fat calipers, all of those things are really what we're learning through the research actually is that those really aren't the best indicators of health. So there's a considerable amount of medical evidence and research to support this. And if you're interested, I highly recommend research by Dr. Lindo Bacon. The book Health at Every Size by Dr. Lindo Bacon is a fantastic kind of entry point into exploring some of that. But really what intuitive eating is a practice that encourages us to get back to health as our primary objective. Not transform your body, but transform your health. And really health from a unique and autonomous perspective. What does health mean to me? How does health want to, how do I define that? And how do I want to feel in my body? So really free from these constraints of dieting, restriction, food rules. We're going to let all those go. I know it sounds scary, but trust me, trust the process. And really encouraging us to get back to our innate knowing of what our bodies actually need. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Gillian, does it work? And notice that work is in bunny ears. It's in quotations, but what does the science say? This is one of the pieces I actually absolutely love about this framework is that, it was developed in the early 90s. And when it was developed, it was research informed. But now it is actually validated by the research, which makes my nerdy self go bananas. I love it. And it's been studied again and again and again. And it's very well validated in the research. Actually, in a review published in 2014, the authors concluded that intuitive eating helps participants develop a healthier relationship with food and resulted in improved blood pressure, lipids, and other markers of cardiorespiratory fitness independent of weight loss. Hear that last part again. Independent of weight loss. They saw improvements in health, really valid health metrics, blood pressure, lipids, and other measures of cardiorespiratory fitness and without any changes, potentially. No relationship with weight. And so, ironically, they found that by taking the focus off the weight, it actually also helped some participants naturally settle into their healthy BMI. Now we're going to talk about BMI as a structure within intuitive eating because it's kind of a bit of a Pandora's box once we open it. It's a bit of a mess in there, but everybody has a natural set point range, and what we find with intuitive eating is we find that we naturally settle into our natural set point range. That might not fit the BMI chart, but it will be your healthy weight. So another study, actually that's quite recent, showed that intuitive eating is effective in improving eating, weight, and psychological related variables among women struggling with body and weight and body image. So the bottom line is yes, it works, depending on how you define works. And works in my books is I want to see that you're healthy. I want to see that you're healthy, vibrant, energetic, and can live the lifestyle you want to live. So how do you do it? Sounds great. You've made the case, Gillian. I want to do it. How do I do it? So how do you do intuitive eating? um, really differently from all other approaches, intuitive eating isn't a thing you do. It's not a light switch or a bandwagon to jump on. It is very much a practice. There's no one right way to do it. It's simply about integrating these ideas one at a time and really allowing them to meld together. Like I said, it's a framework of 10 principles. The 10 principles kind of do this. We're not going to take steps here. We're going to kind of introduce the principles and you're going to kind of integrate them one at a time in a way that works for you. And so like I said, follow this, there's no kind of five-step process to this. It's really very much a more nuanced process. And so, I'm going to share with you these 10 principles, and really what I want you to listen for as I'm sharing these 10 principles is, something that really kind of strikes your fancy, like that really kind of triggers your interest. Like, oh, that's really interesting. That's something I really struggle with. I can see how that would really help me. So as I'm explaining them, really consider which one stands out. Which ones would benefit you the most if you grew in that area. And I also want you to hear this. There's might be some areas, some principles that you're like, so not ready to go there yet, Gillian. And that's okay. We're going to progress through this. That's why, I really encourage people to take a really self-guided approach. If you're taking more of a self-guided approach, to really take it step by step. When I'm working with clients one-on-one, that's really why coaching is so powerful here, and why kind of a self-directed course is so powerful here is because there's no, like I said, no right way to go through this. You're going to go through it bit by bit and kind of bite-sized pieces by bite-sized pieces, but you might need longer with some principles. You might be able to skip over some principles, but because you kind of already got that piece. So bottom line is, I do want you to know this. We do need to make sure that we're kind of learning in a way that our brains learn. And so this, like I said, it's not a light switch. You're going to layer piece by piece on and really do it slowly so that your brain has time to learn, right? We don't learn to swim. I use this analogy, but I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I say it a lot, but I think it's because it's a really powerful metaphor. You did not learn to swim. 99.9% of the population did not learn to swim by jumping in the deep end. They learned by starting in the shallow end, learning technique, learning how to float, learning how to breathe, learning all these things, all these fundamental skills. And with time, layering all those fundamental skills together, you were able to swim to the deep end. So we're going to do the same thing with intuitive eating. We're going to layer pieces on one at a time. And with time, you'll get to that deep end of intuitive eating where you feel really confident and joyful playing in the pool. All right, so let's explore the 10 principles now. Now, I said it before, but I want to reinforce it right now because it's vital that you hear this. This is not 10 steps. There are no 10 steps to intuitive eating. These are 10 principles, and they very much do this. I don't know how to do that any differently, but they weave together, and they weave differently together for every single person. So there's no right way to do this. And we're going to explore each of these principles. And I really want you to just put in your back of your head, like, yeah, I can see myself growing in that area. I think that would be really beneficial to me. So let's go through them. Principle 1, is to reject the diet mentality. And it might be that you, since you're already here, that you've stumbled upon this video, that you are really ready to reject this diet mentality, that you are already kind of clear that the idea of dieting doesn't really fit for you anymore. But within this principle, what we're really going to identify and really start to see is that diet culture is everywhere. And you might be thinking, well, what's diet culture? Diet culture is really this idea that your body is a problem to be fixed, that this outer shell needs to be altered in order to be healthy. And it's all the rules and ideas and judgments that go alongside that. And ultimately, it's everywhere. It's very woven into the fabric of our culture, and for some people more so than others. But as you start to notice diet culture, you can't unnotice it. Once you start to becoming aware of it, you're going to notice that it's everywhere. It's in our TV shows, it's in our movies, it's in our books, it's in our media, it's in our conversation. Just some simple examples just to help land for you. One would be like conversations about weight loss. Oh, wow, you look so great. Have you lost weight? Diet culture. The fact that bigger body actors are often the joke, or they're the funny character, or they're the like character that is there for kind of nuances and interest, but it's not the lead character more often than not. Even within like cartoons, that's often the case. There's a lot of kind of fat phobia and a lot of kind of stereotyping that happens with people in bigger bodies. It's even before and after pictures. What does a before and after picture really say? It's that you're better after, all basically looking at this aesthetic. Sure, you might have had health changes as well, but by showing a before and after picture, we're really pointing to you're better if you're smaller. What happens when you gain weight after you've been in a before and after picture? How do you then feel about going back to your before? And how does that land for you? And how does that impact your health and well-being? Because your mental health is part of your health too. So the big message that diet culture tells us ultimately is your body is a problem to be fixed, and you must eat this way, move this way, and then you will be acceptable. And this is really unacceptable because ultimately it leads us to dieting, and the reality is that 95% of diets do not work. And that's the quote that's the stat that's thrown around, but the reality is it just doesn't work, and it doesn't work long term. Diets work short term, they don't work long term. There is no sustainable evidence for diets, even ones that say it's a lifestyle. It's still a diet. And so ultimately we want to shift the conversation back to feeling a certain way. And so rejecting diet culture is really, really about identifying, being able to identify diet culture, being able to see it where it is, and really being able to poke holes in it. And so some actions that you kind of involve, and when you're exploring this principle, might look like throwing out diet books or magazines that are offering these kind of false promises. It might be cleaning up your social media feeds, and that involves unfollowing, but that also means following some people that are inspiring in this realm. It might be we do something called a diet inventory, where you really get clear on how dieting has hindered your life, or what it's cost you to be involved in diet culture. And also exploring hidden forms of diet culture. I kind of alluded to the one that it's a lifestyle, but there's a lot of really hidden forms of dieting that are really seen as totally acceptable, definitely, especially in the fitness realm. So, that's rejecting diet mentality. There's obviously a lot more to it, but just again, as this overview. So let's talk about principle number 2, which is honor your hunger. This is a really important one. Ultimately, your body needs food at regular intervals in order to function and to thrive. This includes adequate levels of carbohydrate and just calories in general that are required for optimal body and brain functioning. And dieting really throws off your natural hunger cues. In fact, it's very common with chronic dieters to actually not even really have hunger signals anymore. like, I'm not really hungry. Well, what happens over time is our bodies are really brilliant. Like, well, this person's completely unreliable, so I'm just going to blunt this hunger because there's nothing they're not working for me. So a lot of times within this piece of the framework, it's about reclaiming that body trust and eating regularly as an act of self-care in order to rehabilitate those hunger signals. So, you know, you might, one of the things we'll also explore here too is what we call the restrict binge cycle. It's very, very common to when in someone who has been chronically restricting, chronically dieting, they'll have concerns about the idea that they're binging, and it really might feel like a binge, but it's probably not a binge by the formal terminology in terms of kind of the assessment of a true binge in terms of binge eating disorder. What feels like a binge is actually your body recouping what you haven't eaten. So our body has all these uh, physiologic and psychological mechanisms to drive you to eat if it is not being properly fueled. And so that when you're making up for lost time and you're eating, sometimes that feels very intense. Something we actually call within the framework primal hunger, because it is very primal and you feel very insatiable, like you just can't get enough. And it's very much a repercussion of restriction. And so part of getting reacquainted with your hunger and honoring it is recognizing that for what it is and coming back to a place of eating for self-care. So, some of the ideas we explore here are eating from self-care, really starting to notice your hunger cues and recognizing that hunger might not show up in obvious ways. Hunger doesn't always have to be the growling belly. There's lots of other ways that hunger shows up in bodies, and starting to get reacquainted with, what the different levels of hunger even are. When is it a five-alarm hunger versus a, I'm just starting to notice I'm a little bit hungry, and it's starting to kind of know when it is in that range that you need to eat to feel well. Okay, principle number 3 is to make peace with food. And this is the one I think intuitive eating is most kind of seen as. Within the framework, you have full and unconditional permission to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and however much you want. And when I say that to people, they're like, that's disastrous. How on earth am I going to eat healthy if I have this unconditional permission to eat? That seems really scary, overwhelming, dangerous. I think I just eat jujubes all the time. And I get that fear because we've been taught to believe that we need rules in order to behave around food, and that there's a lot of morality tied into foods, like good versus bad. But what's really different about intuitive eating is that all foods fit. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. All foods fit. All foods fit in intuitive eating. And what that means is that there are no good or bad foods. We don't have this binary relationship with food anymore. We embrace that all foods can be part of a healthy relationship with food. Now, obviously, there's going to be exceptions if you have any sort of dietary restrictions that are related to medical needs. For example, I'm celiac. I don't eat gluten because gluten is very unhealthy for my body and makes me feel very unwell. And so, obviously there's going to be exceptions to that, but mostly all foods fit. And so why this is so kind of counter to what we believe is that it's really very much a paradox. What we find within the framework is actually when we give this unconditional permission, what we end up noticing is that if we give ourselves permission, this kind of forbidden fruit energy goes away from those foods. And as we habituate, we go through a process called systematic habituation. As we go through that process, and don't worry, it's a very thought out process and it's very done in a very safe way, only when you're ready, you start to explore these foods that you've maybe had some rules around. And as you give yourself more permission around them, the lure kind of just settles around them. The energy around them just kind of settles. And I didn't believe it either. I didn't believe it was possible. But over time, what I have personally found, both personally and professionally found, is that it does. It works all the time. And so what we find is as we release this rule, we find more peace around foods, and it gets a whole lot easier to eat in a way that feels really relaxed. So within this principle, we explore what foods you have that might have restrictions on them, whether that's a completely off limits foods or you have kind of like caveats around the food. Like I can have this, but I can only have this amount, and I can only have it if I'm out of the house, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You start to get clear and curious about, what's behind that. Where did I develop that idea? Sometimes understanding where that idea came from can be really helpful to kind of exploring where to go from there. And then when you're ready, we go through this process, like I said, called systematic habituation, where we start to explore those foods. And we do it in a really, really slow, conscious way. So don't feel concerned about that. It's not a like, just let her rip, go for it. I mean, it can be. Some people do approach it that way. I tend to take more of a systematic approach. So, next principle, number 4, is challenging the food police. Challenging the food police, really, I almost want to rename this principle, which I can't do because it's a framework. But how I think of this one is really getting clear on the voices of diet culture, on the voices are the unhelpful diet voices. And so as we get clear on these unhelpful diet voices, we can kind of put a name to them. And when we put a name to them, we can kind of see them for what they are, and we start to question them, like almost like this kind of curious observer. Like, oh, what's that voice? What's that about? What's the history behind that? And as we do that, we can start to get some healthy distance from them. So just a few, just so you kind of start to kind of hear them maybe. The first one is the food police, and so hence the name of the principle. And the food police is really that voice inside you that really monitors the rules and restrictions, kind of like the police, the rules and the law-abiding rules and restrictions of diet culture, and rules you've maybe taken on from a program you've done or from a diet you did or whatever it is, or maybe something your well-meaning parents said along the way, and you've internalized these, and you've ingrained those into your own beliefs about food. So we're just going to start to get curious about those. The second voice that we kind of identify is the nutrition informant. And this is, I call it the internalized voice of a super judgy doctor or nutritionist. It's like, this is this much, da, 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 and this has this much, and da, 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 and like all the little rules. Do you like that little voice? All these little diet rules we have around foods. And then there's also the diet rebel, and pardon the language, but I call this one the fuck it voice. This is the voice that shows up when you have kind of gone off plan, you've fallen off the wagon, and that voice that says, we'll just start fresh on Monday, but between now and then, I'm just going to let her rip because let's go. Diet rebel, rebel hard, right? So it's that powerful voice that can really kind of lend you into what feels like bingy behavior, or really off the wagon behavior. Again, within this framework, we're just letting go of the wagon entirely. There's just no bad or wrong. There's no good or bad. It is really all foods fit. It's okay. And we're learning along the way from all of the behaviors we engage in. So the good news to all those voices is that we have counter or powerful ally voices that kind of counter each of these voices. And by noticing them, we can start to shift. By noticing the unhelpful voices, we can start to shift into these. Okay, how can I flip that? How can I take that and really flip this into something that's going to serve and support me? So within this principle, we really explore the ingrained thoughts and beliefs you have about food, about your body, and about fitness. And then we explore as well fitness or personal and family rules as well. So sometimes a lot of our rules come from our families of origin, and that might not be your direct parents, that might be your grandparents, that might be generational stuff that you've kind of brought into your beliefs around food and food fitness in your body. And we start to identify these destructive dieting voices and develop your own powerful ally voices. It's really, really a powerful part of the process. Okay, this next one is genuinely the hub of this whole framework, and it's discover the satisfaction factor, because satisfaction is stolen from us when we diet. We are physiologically designed to enjoy eating. It is, we are designed to enjoy the experience of eating, to enjoy everything about it, the environment, the whole experience of eating. But diet culture really steals that. It's like, here's this like broiled chicken and steamed broccoli and like leftover from yesterday, but it's what you should eat. No joy. at least not for most people. And so, this is where we recognize that eating is so much more than just filling the tank. I often say it's woven into the fabric of our culture. We celebrate with food. We commiserate over food. Food is part of the whole human experience. It's not just about, if it was really just mechanistic and we just needed to get kind of pellets into our body, then we would eat that way. But that's not how we're designed. We have these taste buds, we can smell things, we can have textures, and there's so much more to our eating experience than just putting fuel in the tank. And so, this not just includes the foods we select, which is kind of what I've been alluding to, but also the environment we consume them in and our overall eating experience. So, in this principle, we really embrace the overall experience of food and eating. We start to consider your food choices, but also the environments that you eat within. That's people, places, and things in which you eat. I offer some guided meditations around this often, and we really kind of explore what does satisfaction mean to me? What foods do you find really satisfying? And what you often find is that when you start to really focus on satisfaction, that drive to eat past fullness, that drive to ignore all your signals starts to diminish. Which really sets you up really well for the next principle. Again, not that you have to do these in order, but there is a sequence to these it's logical for a lot of people. But like I said, we can this. But the next principle is to respect your fullness. And respecting your fullness is really about not eating past the point of fullness, and allowing yourself to connect to fullness in a way that feels really right for you. Again, there's no right or wrong level of fullness, just what really serves and supports you. And often eating past the point of fullness is really a repercussion of restriction and diet mentality. And so, I really want you to let that sink in that, often overeating is really a function of restriction, whether that's a restriction of satisfaction, right? We're not ever eating foods that we're satisfied by. So when we have the satisfying food, we like overdo it with it. But if we actually gave ourselves permission to eat it on a regular basis, we'd probably be satiated with a very small amount. And same thing with different types of foods, or if you've been restricted and you undereat, then of course you're going to overeat later in the day because your body's trying to make up for lost time. And so it's really about, again, tuning into your body. You notice I'm saying that a lot. It's about tuning into your body. A big piece of intuitive eating is what we call body attunement, being able to listen to our bodies and be responsive to them, and really trusting that our bodies know what it is that we need. And really connecting to fullness, and really connecting to what does fullness mean to you, not guided by the end of the plate that if you're a member of the Clean Plate Club, raise your hand. Yep. Proud card carrying member since 1985. But if you are a clean plate person, do you stop because the plate is empty, or do you stop because you're satiated? And can you stop before that plate is empty? And if your plate is empty and you're still feeling hungry, can you allow yourself to have more and let fullness be your guide as opposed to a portioned amount? If you've chronically dieted, you've probably just developed portion control in your head that doesn't necessarily relate to how much your body actually needs. So the idea is to get back to, what does this body need, and what do I really feel like, and what's going to serve and support my health and well-being. So within this principle, really connecting to physical sensations, really tuning into the body, becoming more mindful of what's happening in our bodies, and really exploring kind of the situations and environments that support you to be present. A lot of times we're so distracted in our lives that it's really hard to listen to our signals. So we start to look at how that can play into things as well. And also considering kind of what foods really contribute to your fullness and satiety. We actually really look at staying power. What foods really give you a lot of bang for your buck? What's really going to help you to stay full for longer and really be satiated? So this next one is the one that probably overwhelms the most. And so the reason being is that, ultimately eating emotionally is something that makes a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. A lot of chronic dieters really feel like eating emotionally is bad and wrong because diet culture tells us it is. Don't eat emotionally. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. It's very mechanistic, right? But we're not robots. And the reality is, like I said, food is woven into the fabric of our culture. And I said earlier, we commiserate with food, we celebrate with food. Food is very tied to our emotional state. And so, while we can acknowledge that food's not going to fix our feelings, it's not going to, solve the problem if we're struggling with something, but it actually, might support our, might boost our mood a little bit. There's a biochemical reaction that happens when we eat that actually boosts our mood a little bit. There's a reason we eat emotionally. It's satisfying, it's a bit of pleasure. And so there's a psychological and a biological reason that we tend to lean towards food. There's also the habit of using food in this way. It's a tool that we have in our toolkit. So we take a very counter approach to diets in the intuitive eating framework, which is that we don't demonize it. We're just going to again take ourselves out of this pressure cooker and say it's okay if you eat emotionally, and let's really get curious about what's going on. When I'm leaning on food for emotional purposes, what's going on for me? What do I need in this moment? What other tools can I add to my toolkit to support myself through this challenging time? And so the goal in this principle is really to let's add more tools to the toolkit. Let's get more aware, more self-awareness around what's happening for me. And really, before we're in the moment of feeling kind of distraught or feeling big feelings, before we get there, can we come up with some game plans around how we might tackle that in a way that really serves and supports our desires around our health? And then, taking all the shame and guilt away from it, because the moment we add shame and guilt into the conversation, it really does transform the whole experience, and not in a positive way. It really just kind of adds fuel to the flame, adds gasoline. Adds fuel to the flame. That was what I was trying to get at. Adds fuel to the flame of how we negatively view the whole experience. If we just take the shame and guilt around it, take the judgment off of it, and, take ourselves out of that pressure cooker, it's okay. It's okay to use that tool. And how can we add tools to that toolkit? All right. So the next principle is respecting your body. And you're like, yeah, huh? Yeah, I know I should respect my body, but the reality is that dieting is really very much a disrespectful approach to relating with our bodies. You know, Ultimately, our world is meant to have diversity. What a boring world it would be if we were all met this perfectly thin ideal, if we all met beauty standards, if we all kind of looked exactly the same, which is really what dieting and beauty standards are all trying to do. They're trying to get us to conform to this very narrow version of what we're supposed to look like. And, really trying to contort yourself into fitting into that mold that it doesn't want to be in is not showing our bodies respect. It's not, being grateful for the gift of this healthy body, this body that has been gifted to me. It's about, really making your body your adversary. This approach is all about making your body your ally, making your body, really respecting that your genetic blueprint is a gift, not a burden. And really that this foundation belief that all bodies are deserving of dignity and respect. And so within this kind of more gauzy principle, we're really getting landed into body gratitude. When's the last time you expressed gratitude for your body? I know, right? Like it's just not something we're taught to do. It's like the conversation is more around like, being derogatory towards our body. What if you actually shifted those conversations and really, regularly express gratitude for your body? Wouldn't that be like transformative? It'd be revolutionary, I think. It's really about exploring other ways that we can show our body respect. Even simple things like wearing clothing that fits and doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, having undergarments that fit. you it's very simple things that can go a long way to making you feel respected in your body. We also look at exploring body comparison and something called body checking, where you're chronically looking to see if your body looks okay, whether that's in clothes or in mirrors. We talk about weighing. We talk about being obsessive about weighing and whether or not that's serving you. we go all in. So it's a big meaty principle. It's a little bit more philosophical, but it's a good one, and it really does. It often is a very big eye opener for a lot of people. In principle 9, we get into kind of my sweet spot, which is movement. Of course, with a degree in kinesiology, and as a registered personal trainer, I'm super passionate about movement and moving joyfully. And that's another reason I really love this framework is that it was developed by two dietitians, but Evelyn actually has a background as a runner. And as an athlete, she actually went to the qualified for the Olympics. And so, you know, that background and the joyful aspect of movement is a really big piece of this framework. And it's because it's a really big piece of health and feeling good in your body. And if you've watched anything from me before, you know that I really vehemently believe that we really need to find the way that works for us to move, that there's no one right way to move. There's no one right way to eat. There's just the way that works for you in your body. And it's really about figuring out what that is, identifying any barriers that you have to doing that thing, and then helping you move there with time so that you feel good. And so, getting really clear on what movement feels good in your body, breaking up some of those misconceptions about what you need to do to be healthy, because there's a lot of misconceptions around the movement piece, primarily that we have to kind of do the fitness thing. We have to exercise, we have to sweat really hard, and we have to push really hard. And that's really not true. And that's one of the biggest myths we get to dispel within this principle is that you can not, you don't have to exercise that hard to be healthy. You do need to move. And it's figuring out how do you like to move your body so that you feel good. And then number 10, the 10th principle is, oh, here it is. Finally, we're going to talk about nutrition. Yes, we honor our health with gentle nutrition. And I always think of like the first 8 principles. Movement is kind of like the mediator there, but then the first 8 principles is really about unpacking and unmessing up all of the things we've learned from diet culture, getting refamiliarized with your body, getting connected, getting attuned. And then principle 10 is really like, okay, back to the basics. What really works for nutrition in my body? And really exploring nutrition without rules, without morality, really just the facts. What do we really know about food and about how food interacts with my body? And starting to mindfully choose foods that honor our bodies. And we explore a principle called body food choice congruence, where we're choosing foods that actually work for our bodies and doing that more often as a sign of respect and a sign of honoring our bodies. And so within gentle nutrition, again, all foods fit. It's really about understanding that lasting nutrition isn't about the individual choices we make, but about the bigger arc. It's about the bigger relationship we have with food over time and honoring our body along the way. So very much within this principle, we are going to be exploring the basics of nutrition, understanding kind of the 3 tenets of gentle nutrition. We're going to explore kind of how to choose foods, how to figure out what foods work for your body, and really understanding kind of developing really your individual food philosophy. So from here, so those are the 10 principles. I've overviewed them relatively quickly here, but I want you to, hopefully you have a bit of a broad view now of each of the 10 principles. And now I want to just dig into a couple of the kind of common misconceptions because there's some common myths and misconceptions about intuitive eating, and I just kind of want to get those out of the way. So number 1 is that it's about following your gut. And, eat when you're hungry. I mentioned it earlier, kind of eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, be done. Like, yes, and it's true, but there's more to it. And, if you're following intuitive eating, it's not to say that you're never going to overeat again, that you're never going to, delay eating because you don't have food handy, etc. Like sometimes we can't always follow our body's rhythms. We do our best to, but reality is there's more to it than just following your gut, and it's really about, like I said, developing some of those external health values that are free from all those restrictions, rules, and guidelines that are kind of based in diet land. One of the other ones that I hear often is, but I think I'm just going to eat junk food. I'll just eat Twinkies all day. And And the funny thing is that, like I said, there's this paradox is as we give ourselves food freedom, what we find is people feel more inclined to eat the healthy stuff. They feel more inclined to eat and I say healthy, but healthy stuff, right? Again, we're releasing all that morality, but we feel more inclined to eat more nutritionally dense foods because it feels good. And I feel good when I eat those foods. And I also really enjoy those play foods, those what we would they call as treat, or what we used to refer to as cheat. We're going to release all that negativity and we're going to really embrace that all foods fit and that some foods are really about joyful experience and satisfaction. And some foods are about nourishing our bodies. Some are nourishing our souls, some are nourishing our bodies. The other myth that shows up a lot is that, that whole eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. I've kind of addressed that one a little bit already, but it doesn't, eating intuitively doesn't mean you're always going to nail that. Every so often, if I make a really delicious meal, or it's like I'm at my mom's and she's made this really special dessert, I might have two helpings and I might regret the second one. I still have that every now and then, and you likely will because you're a human, you're not a robot. And so the reality is that we're going to find our way with this. Again, it's a practice, not a light switch. The other one is that you can't follow a nutrition plan for a health condition. And like I said earlier, yes, you can, because I'm living proof. I'm celiac, which means my body does not tolerate gluten. When I have gluten, I have a significant physiologic response that is not advantageous for life. And so, I'm also quite intolerant of dairy. Dairy just doesn't seem to work for my body. And so I do have some rules around those foods because rules or guidelines around those foods because I have determined that that is a really clear line for me. So there is a way to be diabetic and intuitively eat. There is a way to have other health conditions and intuitively eat. If you're working with a dietitian, if you're working with your physician, and you have restrictions that are grounded in medical reasoning, absolutely you can work that with intuitive eating. One of the other ones is that you have to have a huge financial capability to follow your nutritional whims. And while yes, if we have a budget in mind, it does limit us a little bit in terms of finding our freedom around foods. But it does not mean we can't eat intuitively. So we're going to eat within our means, and we're going to be able to have food freedom within our means, and that's a really important piece of this puzzle as well. If you have dealt with food scarcity or you are dealing with food scarcity, it can that can be a part of what's going on in terms of your relationship with food. If you've had periods where you have not had enough food, then that it's the some people impose the restrictions. If food scarcity has been the imposer of the restriction of or the lack of food, then there's other nuances to explore. But certainly, if you have a history of scarcity, there's going to be more to explore. And if you are currently dealing with some limitations in terms of food, certainly there's going to be some different nuances to explore as well. Once you're an intuitive eater, this is the last one. Once you're an intuitive eater, you won't have struggles with food. Sadly, also beautifully, we are humans and we are living in diet cultures. The reality is that, this isn't going anywhere. We're going to be dealing with diet culture. We're going to be bombarded with it. Certain environments that we might be presented with, certain environments that we're in are going to be more or less triggering for us. And the trick really is to start to kind of notice this and start to kind of curate your environments and curate your life so that you can eat intuitively. That doesn't mean you're cutting people out of your life. That doesn't mean you're never going to go certain places that you find challenging. It just means that you're going to go in with some clear boundaries and maybe some extra tools in your toolkit, going in eyes wide open. Okay, a few final questions here that often come up. Can I eat intuitively and also explore a style of eating? Yes, you can. It's totally cool to explore different ideas, especially ones that are grounded in research. And it's all about the intention. Really the intention with intuitive eating is to tune in to our body signals and let our body signals guide our food choices as opposed to some arbitrary rule outside of us. It's the difference between what we call an intuitive eating, an autonomous approach versus an authoritarian approach. So diet culture is very much an authoritarian. Someone outside of me knows better than me how to eat eat and how to relate to my body and how to move my body. So this is about autonomy. So yes, you can explore things again as long as it's coming from this place grounded in your own health beliefs and your own health values. Can I eat intuitively and also overeat sometimes? Yes, I just referenced that. Every once in a while I overeat still, and that's okay. It's about knowing what you're doing and knowing why that's happening and getting clear on that. This is not about perfection. This is about progress, and this is about a practice. This is a big one, you guys, and I'm going to speak to it because I think it's kind of like the elephant in the room in the conversation of intuitive eating. Can I eat intuitively and also secretly hope my body will change? And if I just said that and you felt this like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. I see you and I hear you, and you're not alone. A lot of people coming into this are still kind of have this lingering hope that maybe if I eat intuitively, this will be the thing that works. And, I still feel it from time to time because we live in diet culture. We live in a culture that tells us bigger bodies aren't okay. And if you're in a bigger body, or if you're in a smaller body and you feel like you should be in a bigger body, there's this cultural draw to kind of fit this norm, this thin ideal, and this kind of very, very specific body type. And so, we live surrounded by that. And so for that to go away, it's not going to happen overnight. The difference here is that we notice it, we're aware of it, and we just put weight loss or changes into our body on the back burner. We're just not going to focus on it. It's going to stay there. It might linger. It might whisper in your ear now and then, but you're just going to be aware of it, and you're going to respectfully distance yourself from it, and be kind and generous with yourself and compassionate with yourself. All right. Bottom line is that intuitive eating is about you. I really hope you're ready to dive in. If you'd like to learn more about intuitive eating, if you'd like to jump into my intuitive eating course, if you'd like to connect with me about coaching, you can find information below, and I look forward to hearing from you.